We're better partners, we're better colleagues, we're better leaders when we are bringing our full balanced self, when we're not harried and absolutely at our wits' end and under-resourced and slept and undernourished. We absolutely bring the better version of ourselves.
Incubators, today I have a guest, Nicole Ward, who I'm excited to bring to you. She's the founder of Elite Athlete and someone who lives at the intersection of high stakes leadership, performance, and health. Nicole works with executives and board level leaders every day inside complex, pressure filled environments. And she brings a really grounded perspective on what it actually takes to perform well without burning out. And we're going to talk about leadership in this episode as a kind of sport, nervous system resilience, and what happens when success outpaces vitality. Because whether you're leading a team, a business, a family, I don't care what, you're always leading your own life. And I don't know about you, but it is an aim of mine to show up as my best self no matter where I am. Not saying I can always do it, but that is my goal. Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you for having me. I'm very honored to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited. So tell us, when did you realize leadership needed to be treated like an elite sport, not an endurance contest?
It started almost 20 years ago. My quick origin story is I was climbing the corporate ladder and very successful by all the sort of worldly external means. And I rolled my Land Rover. And through that journey of healing and recovery from that, really got insight to just how unhealthy I was living. And it started me on a journey. And I've been biohacking myself and wellness geeking myself for about 15 years. And I feel like the origin of the executive athlete, my platform, if you will, and my upcoming book, it's really grounded in, we optimize for everything these days except our own health. And it's one of the biggest competitive advantages we have, especially if you look at it through a corporate lens. And I feel like there's real things that people can do that just dialing different knobs, 20-25%, can get exponentially better results in our performance. And so I've done a lot of work, a lot of lifting, a lot of studying, thousands and thousands of hours, board certifications, a bunch of stuff to be able to get to a point where I've sort of hacked through to get to some really good results, or things that people can do to get to a really good result faster without having to go to all the effort and the work that I did. So that's how I came to be here.
I love this niche. I love how you are putting this together, health and leadership, like specifically your health, that we minimize our health, particularly women, right? In fact, I was just doing a Monday Muse on this, how we're conditioned to produce and produce and produce, and sort of rewarded from a little ego hit when we put our own health aside. Like, then we can get into the, oh, I work so hard and I'm exhausted. It's almost like a badge of honor. And,
it is.
And you're really so you're talking about physical health. Tell us about what you mean by biohacking. What are you doing with people? What did you learn?
Sure. It's a great question. And you're right. We have treated, oh, I don't, I'm not, I sleep 4 hours a night. I'm really busy. I'm working. I'm traveling. All that is this badge of honor. And instead, all it's doing is depleting us and putting us in the room at these really important big tables,
yes,
coming in at maybe 40-50%. And once you get a taste of what it's like to come in optimized, recovered, well slept, well nourished, it's a game changer, because all of a sudden, again, that competitive advantage I mentioned, that mental and emotional advantage that gives you. I look back for so many years that I was in rooms and I was at half, maybe 60% of my best. And once you get a taste of what your best is, you can't go back. It's like, once you know, you can't not know.
Absolutely. So you're talking about being well rested and being at your optimum physically.
Physically and emotionally, because I think it's all connected, right? And when I say biohacking, in answer to your question there, biohacking is a way of recognizing our feedback loops and tightening them. So what biohacking is at its core is recognizing what's my optimum, and are there tools, resources, technologies, supplements, things that I can use to augment, enhance, improve, and get me to optimum, right? It doesn't mean that we're broken inherently, but the biohacking piece is, how can I take what I was born with and all the things and then augment slightly to get to peak performance? So that's what I mean when I say biohacking.
Yeah, and I've seen some of your Instagram posts that sort of surf different things, from protein shakes to red light therapy and all kinds of things that you're looking at to help people.
Yes, and sometimes it's as simple as looking at the apps we have on our phone, and as opposed to scrolling, and choosing apps that, I'll give you an example. An example of a biohacking app is one is called Supco. And I do a post on this, but it's actually a wonderful app that allows you to scan the barcode of the supplements that you're taking. And then it will tell you, it does two things. It will grade that supplement on purity, so you know what it is you're spending your money on and how clean their supply chain is when it comes to toxic metals or any sort of impurities. And then the second thing it does is it shows you where there's overlap or gaps in your supplementation routine, right? And then I've encouraged people to also have that Supco app right next to an app for dietary intake, as an example, where maybe you're someone, you don't want to track your food forever. But if you did it for 2 weeks, finding what you're routinely eating over the course of 2 or 3 weeks and being able to look at, where are the gaps in your micronutrients? What if you're routinely deficient throughout the course of 2 or 3 weeks that you track for vitamin C or vitamin E, a baseline, right? Using those two, for example, a food app and a Supco app, even if you just did that for 2 weeks side by side, what amazing things you could find out about yourself to go, oh my gosh, I'm not optimized. I'm missing serious gaps in my supplementation or in my basic vitamin routine. So it's things like that, where it's not about, we're not broken, but we can use those digital tools. We can use resources like that to really help us figure out where we need to be.
I love that. I mean, I love a good app because, there's so much, especially now, it's like, holy cow, like this supplement, that supplement, do this, do that. And everybody is dying on their sword, right? It's the sunlight people. It's only about sunlight. It's only about sun. The water people, it's only about water. It's about water. It's about iodine. It's about vitamin C. It's about D. And it's like dizzying, right? And so we end up doing all of these things, which is great. We need to do them, and purchasing all of these supplements, but we don't know if they're crap supplements. We don't know if we're already taking something that is hitting that bill. It's fascinating to me because I have recently embarked on a massive health overhaul, and I'm doing this really cool program that's all about food and bringing in all of these things. And so it's really interesting that you're talking about this right now, because we're dialing into, like, this is what you need.
It comes, you bring up such a great point, Abby. It comes down to bioindividuality. Your DNA, your hormone panel, your blood serum levels, your hair mineral analysis would tell you something that is totally unique to another individual. And your dietary needs, based on your DNA and many other things, your lab work, etc., are very different than the person that's going to be sitting next to you. And so I'm a big believer in, we've got to test ourselves to really understand. I'll give you a real-time example. Every quarter, I do a Dutch hormone profile. I do a hair mineral analysis. I do blood work, all through Function Health, which is amazing. It's a wonderful. Dr. Mark Hyman founded the company. It's wonderful. Very affordable at-home lab tests that you can do. So I do those tests, and then I push them through ChatGPT. And I ask them, and I've trained ChatGPT, her name is Sage. I ask Sage to approach all of my data through a functional medical lens on the very cutting edge of what's going on in health. And it comes back because it sits on top of all of my data and comes back with incredible results that I then take to my functional medicine doctor. And we have this incredible conversation based on what I've been able to extract from that process. And again, I'm not recommending that people use ChatGPT as their doctor. No. But I think it can bring incredible insight to us when we're trying to understand our labs, trying to understand our health, our nutrition, our diet, the things that are routine in our lives. It can be, again, just another hack that can be incredibly insightful.
Yeah, I love it. I work a lot in the emotional realm and the consciousness realm and all of that stuff. And it's funny because I think a lot of times people who are working in that place, right? You might call it more spiritual, you might call it awakened, whatever. But even in that place, right? You're trying to function at your highest capacity emotionally and with self-regulation, all of those things. But because of the way that we're built, I call it sophisticated sleepwalking, we can completely ignore our physical health and like not even realize it. I mean, I totally can do that. Like I can do all the work and then I can just stuff my face with all kinds of crap at night and not do the work in terms of I'm doing my inner work and everything, but I'm treating my body poorly.
Yeah,
And
which
that has an impact.
it absolutely, because of my platform and my book that's coming out, it touches on the physical, the mental, the spiritual, the work, because it's all connected. It really is. And when I think about just the vagus nerve, right, and and the awareness of, again, the biohacker in me, there's some wonderful devices out there to help us balance our parasympathetic nervous systems, to help us even start to become aware of our parasympathetic nervous systems. Tools like Sensate and some other ones that you can wear that help you all of a sudden go, wow, wait, my parasympathetic nervous system, it's important, right? Because it ultimately affects our digestion. Our gut microbiome is absolutely connected to our brain health, the feelings that we go through on a daily basis. Absolutely.
Well, actually, like the gut is the producer of
Serotonin, and
serotonin, right?
yes.
So depression can very often be caused from a gut biome issue.
Yes, absolutely. 100%. In fact, one of the ways some of the really edgy medicine that's out there right now is looking at how we can treat the gut microbiome with specific probiotics, prebiotics, etc., that affect the serotonin, dopamine, all of the neuro sort of circuitry that we have, figuring it out in the gut first. So yeah, for sure.
So let's talk about, what you see. I mean, you sit across from CFOs and board leaders all day. And what do you see happen to people internally when the pressure never really turns off?
It's a good question. And I wish I had a kinder answer to this, but I sit across from so many C-suite in my world who are prematurely aged, who are highly inflamed, who struggle with weight, who are flying through multiple time zones, not, sleeping in hotel rooms where there's too much light, where they're not optimized at all from a food perspective. The just being on a plane and what that does to us, your circadian rhythms getting disrupted. So I've seen that for years, and it's just the prioritization from their perspective of being on the board and driving results and having the career. In their mind, it requires it. And my offering is that actually there are ways you can hack for it. That's what my book is about, which is basically saying, okay, so you got to change time zones. So you've got to fly to London or Shanghai for work. I get it. But do these 6 things and you will soften the blow by 30 to 40%, right? Okay, so you've got to eat, you're not able to cook your meals at home when you're traveling. I get it. But here's the solve. Take your mushroom organic coffee with you. Take your stevia, your monk fruit with you into the hotel room so you're not drinking moldy coffee. Here are the snacks that you can pack, that you can take. Here's the protein powder with collagen shake that you can take that will fill you up so that you're not snacking in between meals, right? So And it's more complex than that, but they're real world answers to how you can solve for some of these things that would make such a difference. And will it solve for it entirely? No. Travel is travel. Having a big career that has a lot of pressure, it is what it is. But taking workout, what I call them, actually, I'm quoting Rhonda Patrick when I say this, but it's these mini workout snacks throughout the course of the day. You have to be at your desktop, but you could literally stop and do 15 push-ups. You can walk around your desk while you're on a call over and over again, to put in 1,000 steps. There's all sorts of things that you can do to offset if you're willing and you're interested.
Yeah, so this is interesting because to me, I feel that this drive, this conditioning that we have to produce, perform, and like the total hijacking that ultimately just results in all kinds of issues at the bottom line has to do with self-worth issues, has to do with worthiness, that we're getting our worth from our work. How did I get the A? Did I make the deal? Did I get the client? Is my team like me? Whatever it is. In my world, it's do you have the followers? Are people downloading? And that is such a fundamental primal drive that we have. And I think people are going to really love hearing what you're saying because it's not the same thing, right? But it's a concrete thing that you can do to help you with your energy and with showing up better. That isn't like a deep dive into your worthiness issues, but at the same time, if you're willing to take those steps, you're training your brain and body to feel more worthy. Like I am worthy of eating this snack, this walking snack. I am worthy of taking the time to have the supplements or you're treating yourself better. And just by taking that action, it feels like you're working on your worthiness in a way.
It is. It's a start, right? It's a launch into that bigger conversation, which, like you say, is what are we chasing and why? Are we chasing success because we've got a hole inside of us from when we were 7 and told we weren't enough? Are we, drilling ourselves because we don't believe we're worth nourishing ourselves, right? I do believe that this starts the conversation. It gets people aware, even if their motivation is competitive advantage, it's still that awareness that recovery, allowing ourselves to recover, which the United States, we're known for our work ethic in the United States, right? Anywhere else in the world, they think we're nuts.
And for our shitty health, by the way. And we're known for our shitty health. We're the least healthy nation that there is.
Yes, absolutely. We are at the very bottom when it comes to health. Exactly. And so this whole not allowing, or rather not appreciating, giving ourselves, our parasympathetic nervous systems, our bodies, our health, the opportunity to recover. There's an expiration date on that. Why do we think that there's more Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and cancer and diabetes than ever, when even just 100 years ago, it was a far, far different situation? And we can't ignore it anymore. It's all over the news. It's everywhere, right? And again, for every individual, as I mentioned earlier, it is different. But starting to dial into the balance of output and input and just recognizing that recovery has tremendous value in the long game, it's at least a start.
Well, and along with it's all over the news, what's also all over the news is the pharmaceutical ads, because people just want to take a pill and they're making a shit ton of money while we're all dying. But tell us more about what do you mean by recovery? Like, what does recovery look like?
Thank you. That's such a great question. And I think, not to sidestep the question, but I think it is different for everyone. Some people, depending on what they do, depending on what your output is, your recovery will be different, right? If you're someone who's operating in the world as a professional athlete, your recovery is going to be very different than if you're an executive. However, if we look at it in the executive context, if someone knows that they're flying to London and they've got 4 days of intense meetings, right, back to back to back, and they're going to be overcoming a circadian rhythm adjustment, and again, eating out of their normal cycle, etc. Recovery for that individual, for them to be at their peak performance, but also allow themselves to be balanced during that time, to be at their best. Recovery for that person is in between their calls or meetings, going into a private place. Maybe it's a stairwell, maybe it's a bathroom stall, and doing 5 minutes of deep breathing, right? Recovery could be, like I said, those exercise snacks that I mentioned earlier. It could be, again, stepping into a private, maybe it's an empty conference room where they just put their hand on their heart and just drop into their physical being and just breathe. Recovery could be, as strange as it sounds, every morning when they're there, walking outside of their hotel, putting their bare feet on the ground and grounding, right? Getting sunlight in their eyes. 5 minutes, all it takes. Recovery snacks, right? Where they're just trying to, where they think, okay, tonight when I have my glass of wine at the table, I'm going to water it down so it's a little bit easier on my liver, because I know I have to be networking. I have to be social. I'm here for business. But how can I moderate my alcohol intake? How can I try to be done eating at least 2 hours before I go to bed, right? That's a recovery tool. There's so many ways that people, and again, not to keep referencing my book, forgive me, but there's just so many tools and resources that people can have that can mitigate some of that avalanche of, again, when you're really going to be hit hard and you're in for a lot of meetings and a lot of work and a lot of travel, baking it into your routine, right?
I've had this experience too. You're going, and that glass of wine, that's what you're looking forward to. Like, I want to water that down. I want the whole, in fact, I want two. How do you help people move from, because it's really a self-fulfilling prophecy. How do you help people move from that place was like, no, I need this. I've had a really hard day. It's seen as another demand on me instead of a fuel, right? How do you help people with that? How do you help shift that perspective?
It's a great point. And I would say my answer is twofold. One is a wearable device. And again, not to sound totally like a biohacker here, but whether it's an Aura ring, whether it's a Whoop band, whether it's an Apple Watch, once you know, you can't not know.
Yeah.
And once you track and you see, wow, I've got a huge meeting tomorrow morning. And yes, I feel like I want the second glass of wine, but I need to bring my A game. So and if I know that my Aura or my accountability device, whatever wearable technology it is for you, when I know that in the next morning it's going to show my recovery at 40%, that my HRV was in the toilet, and that my heart rate was 60 to 70 all night long, and that I'm going to wake up and I'm going to feel like crap, what's it worth? And once you've got a wearable, it's accountability. You can't not know. So my first suggestion from almost everyone is getting a wearable device that allows you to see the choices that you make and what the cost is. It's not about beating ourselves up. It's not about beating ourselves down by it. It's about what are the choices I'm making and what's the cost associated. And there's times when it's worth it. There's times when you're with your friends and you're like, you know what, the second glass of wine and the wonderful conversation, I'm going to do it. When you're in the middle of a work week and the stakes are high and you need to over deliver and exceed expectation because you're presenting, you've got a big event, whatever it is, your team needs you, etc., that's when you start playing a bigger game and the wearables help you. The second thing I would offer up is that there are supplements you can take to offset the effects of alcohol. There's things like DHA. There's all sorts of, you can take a little bit of ashwagandha before you go to bed, or a little bit of like a mushroom combination. There are things you can do that will help you. Maybe it's theanine, maybe it's glycine, maybe it's glutamine. So there's numerous things you can take, magnesium, of course, that can help offset the effects of alcohol, that can make it a little bit better. But it is something that we have to look at and look at the ROI on it,
Oh, I love it. I love that you have so many things up your sleeve that can help people literally not have to like go hard on, I've got to do everything just perfectly. I can augment. And what you're saying, I love, because you're saying it's about awareness. It's about, and what I call, waking up. So I talk about the awake advantage, right? And you're saying when you put on a tool, crap, I'm a wreck according to these stats. And as soon as you know that, it makes it harder to not do something. And I just love that hack. I saw on your LinkedIn too, it made me think of this. I saw that you had a reel about one of the goals for 2026 for you was to be radically honest. Like when people ask you questions, to be radically honest with your answer. And in my model, I talk about radical honesty, but radical honesty with self. And so
Mm.
again, it goes to how we can fall asleep so easily and just go and have those glasses of wine or eat late at night or stay up late at night or do all those things. And we don't catch, like if we're being really radically honest with ourselves, that's not the high performer I want. I'm not at my best. I'm not being a high performer because I'm undermining my biology.
Absolutely. And I love what you said about with the self, because, when it comes to radical honesty, I think first off, there's levels to that. I'm like, well, we all want to say we're an honest person. And I
Right.
think most of us are pretty honest. Are we radically honest? Right. And I love what you're saying, which is because it is with the self where you're really sweeping the corners and looking at choices with a very, with that transparent eye of like, wait, what's the choice here? And what am I choosing? It's not about boiling the ocean. It's not about beating ourselves up. I liken it to the analogy of if I've got goals and those goals are at the top of the mountain, I want to make decisions that move me closer to the top of that mountain. That doesn't mean that I don't take a side road now and then or that I don't get it wrong. It's not about the velocity, it's about the direction. And so I feel like if we know what our mountain is and we know what we're committed to, that we make decisions that most of the time get us in towards the top of that mountain and with some grace for ourselves when we mess up or we don't, right? But again, it's just that personal level of accountability. And I find most executives, to be very honest with you, they're all about drive and accountability and holding feet to the fire, right? So it shouldn't be very difficult for them to turn that lens on themselves.
Right, because they're doing on everybody else. Yeah.
Exactly.
And it's interesting when you talk about the mountain, right? Like, because we get so narrow focused. Oh, the mountain is X amount of dollars this year. The mountain is whatever physical thing that we're trying to obtain that I would argue our worth is unconsciously attached to. We're going to feel good if we do that. We're going to feel bad if we don't. But you're writing about longevity. What if the mountain is I want to live long and have a healthy life, and there's something that's quietly, it's at the cost of winning the short game.
Yeah. And for many people, they haven't thought that far ahead. It is still about the short game, right? It's still about winning. It's still about revenue, to use your word. And I'm all too familiar with that word.
Yeah, I'm sure you
Our
are.
value, our value is not our revenue, right? And I've been a chief sales officer the majority of my career in professional services and sat at the executive table and had to make very difficult decisions. And I know what it is to feel like my value is revenue. But at the end of the day, if we want revenue, just purely from an executive context, if we want revenue and we want ROI, the way to get that, the way to really achieve that is by optimizing our health and our wellness and our longevity. That is the win, but people don't see that because they're gripping the bat, to use a baseball analogy. And if they did actually let up on the accelerator, that is to the much larger, greater gain. But it's hard to see that in the moment.
It is hard to see that in the moment. And I think for a lot of people, because I was just thinking, like, when does high performance become self-betrayal? And I think a lot of times we can't see that because we've been so conditioned to think that any amount of focus on ourselves is selfish. We just don't see that, no, I couldn't say this enough. Like, you bring so much more of yourself to a relationship, to a business, to a team when you are not depleted.
We're better partners, we're better colleagues, we're better leaders when we are bringing our full balanced self, when we're not harried and absolutely at our wits' end and under-resourced and slept and undernourished. We absolutely bring the better version of ourselves.
We bring vitality instead of adrenaline.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Why do you feel like, because we're talking all about health, like, why do you, if you do, feel that most corporate health and wellness programs fail at changing anything meaningful.
When we as leaders, when myself as an executive, when I allow for to be vulnerable about my journey, telling my colleagues the story of my journey and set an example of how to be differently, that's when things change. When we have these conversations in the boardroom, when people go through this transformation, which is really what is at the core of this work, is that opportunity for transformation. When they do, they're setting an example and a different standard of what success can look like. And all the wellness programs in the world that are out there, they can try, but it really starts at the top. And we need more examples in leadership of how to do that. And people really sticking their necks out there and going, this is how I'm going to do it differently.
Yeah. What do you think leaders secretly know but don't want to confront?
Such a good question. I think it goes back to what you shared earlier, that there is something missing inside that their success is an attempt to solve for. And I think that's why some of the best leaders in the world are often the most humble, the most underspoken, frankly, and are some of the best listeners, because I think it's very few that actually really get to that place. I think most folks that are climbing the ladder, that are drilling it, that are pushing, that are driving, that are after revenue and success and a title, I think they only see examples, especially in our country, of one way of getting there. And there should be, there's so many other ways of doing that. And we're looking at all the results now. When we look at inflammation, we see some of these people, you see some of the most successful folks, and they're not the healthiest. They're not in the best shape. They don't sleep well. They don't talk to their families. They don't see their families, they burn it at multiple ends, right? So I think in answer to your question, I think it really goes back to what you said, which is seeking things outside of ourselves as a salve in some way of what we should be finding within us.
It can be very confusing because if you can see all these unhealthy people like reaching amazing goals, the short game goals, right? Like then you think, well, that's what I've got to do. That's like, they're not caring about their health. They're not doing all of those things, and they're making a lot of money, or they're killing it in their work. So I think that can really give us the wrong message, but we can have it all, right? It doesn't have to be that. There's so much more than when you're taking care of your health and you're bringing all of yourself to the table. There's so much more than just the financial success.
Absolutely. I agree. And I'm not sure, again, there's a lot of executives out there that I know that have gotten it right and that are really making a difference. But the majority, I just don't think we have enough examples in our culture of how you can do it differently. Certainly Europe is they've got a better platform than we do when it comes to this about balance and recovery and grace. It's a great question.
Let's talk about intuition, because to me, I'm thinking if your body is online and you're taking care of yourself and you're making time for yourself, you are naturally going to be more in touch with your intuition because your nervous system isn't going crazy and you're not thinking a million thoughts. You're more tapped into yourself. And I'm just wondering what you think about that, because some of the greatest leaders have said, Steve Jobs and all kinds of big leaders have said intuition has played an enormous role in their leadership success.
I love that. And I'll tell you, I couldn't agree with it more, because when we are embodied, when we are grounded and have a relationship with our body, I think you mentioned this at the beginning of the podcast, when we actually are aware that we're not our thoughts, but we have thoughts, and that we're connected to our physical being, just that grounding, just kicking your shoes off, putting your feet on the floor and putting your shoulders back into the chair and taking a deep breath, right? It doesn't take much to recognize, oh yeah, let me connect with my neck down through the breath, etc. And I think that embodiment is such a portal. And I talk about this, it's all weaved into my book, which is having the relationship with our body, having that sense of balance. And I think what it does, it also gives us the opportunity to dial down the volume of the noise that's out there. And I just did a post on this, which is everyone had a different relationship with COVID. And I very much respect that. For me, COVID was extraordinary and it was a gift. And one of the things it gave me was the ability to be here doing what I'm doing, because I was able to dial down the volume so I could actually be present and hear, because I didn't have all of the noise that I had been beleaguered with or chosen to be beleaguered with for so many years. And I think it's so important to recognize that there's a lot of audible going on for all of us, whether it's our phones, social media, whether it's outside of us, our own inner noise of our own brains, and recognizing that all that's going on. And how can we afford ourselves quiet, even if it's for setting your phone for every 2 hours to go off with an alarm and just go, quiet. I'm just going to turn it all off. 2 minutes, deep breathing, right? Where I can actually just notice my thoughts, that I'm not my thoughts, and connect with my body, right? But there's real ways we can do those things. And it's so incredibly important because, like you say, we're just walking around these little walking conversations, as Peter Crone says, right? And forgetting that we have physical beings attached to us.
Yeah, I love that because, I've always thought of COVID as just one of many things that is sort of like spirit coming down and saying, hey, wake up, wake up. Like we have to have these catastrophes to sort of wake us up. But I hadn't made that direct connection that literally we had to get quieter. I mean, there was a lot of other things. We lost socialness and all that kind of stuff, but it could have been like literally a direct attempt to like get us quieter and get
Really?
us less distracted. One of the things that I learned on my water fast, which is what I start when you and I first connected. I was like, I'd love to interview, but I've got, 3 weeks ahead of me. And
Amazing.
right.
Yeah.
But one of the things I learned was, to your point, was sitting with a tree and plugging into this tree. I did a Monday Muse on this recently too. And when things are just really going crazy for me in my mind and body, just going outside and just looking at this tree and just dialing into this tree does not care about any of this. It doesn't care that you ate the thing or that your kid this or that or that you made X amount of money or you didn't or you that whatever it is. It literally doesn't care. And if I can stop and just like feel the energy of that stillness. This tree is there in the morning, it's there at night, it's there if there's a hurricane here and it's raining, it's there if it's blazing hot outside. All the things that would get us all worked up and everything. And it's so settling. It's like an instant come back to self, come back to what matters, come back.
Nature is such a wonderful way to do that, right? It's just, there's a wisdom to it and there's a peace to it. And it's so important. That's why we can all walk outside and walk around the block, letting sunlight in our eyes, looking up at a blue sky or clouds, depending, and appreciating the majesty that is nature. And it's such a grounding tool and it's a portal, right? Should we choose to use it that way? And it's free.
Exactly.
Most of the time.
Right. Yeah. Do you find that, because what I'm thinking too, particularly about intuition, is that because we're so conditioned not to plug into that deeper part of ourselves and experience that portal, I know for myself, there have been times where I think it would be very easy to just do a bunch of biohacking things, look at the thing, check, okay, I did that, and override the intuitive part of things. Sometimes we're taking a supplement, it's not the right one for us. Earlier you said we have to really find our own place, or what's right for us. And when we're in such a frenzy, do you find that some of the leaders that you work with will take this information, but they just take it as another way to high perform? I'm going to be so amazing at taking supplements. I'm going to do the best at this. And they just sort of repeat the same way of being in the world, but now they're just bringing it to another.
Different tools to accomplish it.
Yeah.
That could be a byproduct. Hopefully I've written a book that engineers the reasons why the integration of all these approaches, the mental, the spiritual, the physical, the work that it all is a spoke in a wheel that needs to be balanced. But to your point, could someone do that? Absolutely. Do I think that there are CEOs out there right now, actually, that I know that there are CEOs right now that are, microdosing this or got the hyperbaric oxygen chamber downstairs and have the cold plunge and all the things because they're trying to biohack themselves to peak performance? Sure, absolutely. Do I think that there's a risk that they miss that sort of intuitive, integrated piece? Absolutely. The path that I'm trying to outline and to share with folks is one that is more integrated and more of a wheel needs to be balanced, right? And there's multiple spokes in a wheel. It's not just about one. It's not just about supplements. Supplements by the nature of the word, are meant to augment. They're not a substitute for
Yeah.
good nutrition. Wearing a wearable device isn't a substitute for spending some time breathing and meditating during the course of a day, right? So it's about all things integrated in an approach that works. But hopefully, by using some of these tools and resources, the byproduct is we do get to connect with a healthier version of ourselves, which then does dial down the volume of some of the noise that we were exposed to, that allows us new ears to hear and listen to ourselves and explore new paths of going forward and new ways of being.
Yeah. So tell us what the name of your book is.
So it's called Biohacking for the Sales Athlete, Optimizing Your Health to Transform Your Results. So, and that will be out in March. So I'm very excited about that.
Excellent.
And I had to speak to my tribe first as a chief sales officer and executive for so many years. They say, write what you know. And what I knew first and what I've known first for so many years is sales. I feel that sales gets a really bad rap. I consider sales one of the highest forms of service when it's done from the heart. I believe that it's about putting someone else's needs before our own and seeking to serve and to understand fully the context that someone's in, so that whether it's me or my firm or someone else that I know can bring capabilities to bear to support that person in solving whatever it is they're solving for. But they come first. It's not about me. We're vehicles, we're channels, and we're in service. And I feel that by speaking to the sales executives in the world, who, by the way, are some of the biggest offenders of all the things we've been talking about, by the very nature of what they do, that they stand to benefit perhaps the most. And so that's why the first book is about the sales executive and helping my tribe out there hopefully be better, more intuitive, loving, and healthier versions of themselves.
I love that, because I think that when we do get so caught up in the nervous system, it's definitely nervous system dysregulation. When we start to feel that sales are about us, it's like, me, what am I going to get out of this? And then, of course, everything never works out as well, right? You don't get the clients, you don't get the things, everything feels like an uphill battle. But we forget, like, why did you go into this business to begin with? If you bring someone back to why they started, there's something about whatever product they're selling that has meaning to them.
People, right?
People,
because
yeah.
They love people, they love connecting, right? Or they love connecting. But yeah, to your point, there are people that get into sales because they love people and they love a particular industry, or they love a particular product that they're passionate about, right? So yes, very true.
And we're
Very
all
true.
selling. I mean, anybody in business is selling something.
Absolutely.
Right?
I love it. One of my favorite authors, sales authors, his name is Dan Pink, and he wrote a wonderful book called To Sell is Human. We are all selling. We're all hustling something. We're all trying to persuade someone to, whether it's, get a report off the printer for us on their way to get a coffee, whether it's getting your kids to eat the right food at dinner. We're all persuading on a regular basis, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. So let's think about the listener who, whether it's sales or business or family, they're burnt out. They're burning in at all ends. They don't feel like they have a right to take time for themselves. Other people just need too much from them. Where do you start? What's something that they could do, or a handful of things, potpourri, if you will, that different people might be able to choose from? Like, some things may just feel too overwhelming.
Absolutely.
Like, I couldn't start here, but maybe I could start there.
Absolutely. And it's such a good question. And I think it's so true for so many people, because we feel, especially at this time of year when it's all about goals, it's like, I've got to boil the ocean. Like I said earlier, no, we don't. The first thing I would guide anyone is to pick one or two things that they can commit to on a weekly basis, that they're going to shift. And whether that is saying, you know what, I'm going to try just writing down what I eat for a week and actually getting some visibility into, like, what's a macro? Like, how much protein am I eating? How many carbs? How much fat? Be kind of curious, how much sugar am I eating? Or whether it's someone who says, I can't get to the gym, or I can't afford a gym membership, but I'm going to buy some bands. on Amazon for $7. And I'm going to a couple times a week pull up a free, free app on my phone on working out with bands. They travel well, they're very inexpensive, and there's all sorts of YouTube band workouts that you could do. That's just a random example. Or maybe this individual, like I mentioned, says, you know what? I'm going to walk my dogs 10 minutes longer every day than I was before. Or I'm going to get sunlight first thing in the morning. I'm just going to step outside and get sunlight in my eyes first thing in the morning. So there's so many things that we could do. I would recommend first and foremost that someone who's taxed, who's overworked, who feels like they don't have any time for themselves, etc., that they pick one or two things that they know that they could commit to that builds confidence, because they know they can do those two things. I'll give you another crazy example, but it's one that started me on my journey. It was like 17 years ago. And forgive me if it sounds a little crass, but every time that I went into the restroom, because there's a closed door and we're all allowed to do that, knowing that when I sat down, that I could do 10 deep breaths. And we have to do it multiple times a day. Right. It's time by ourselves. So using that time, however someone wants, that's a win, but not a phone, right? No phone, right. Whether it's deep breathing, maybe it's just stretching the body, right? It could be putting our feet on the floor and just grounding and feeling our feet on the floor. But that's time we all get every day by ourselves. Usually that can be used. So there you go.
Love that. I always make a point not to bring my phone when I have to go pee.
Room. Exactly.
It's like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be present for the 30 seconds it's going to take me.
It's just really, it's about picking just a few things and then noticing after a month, like, wow, I did it every week. And it was small and it builds confidence. And then you try something else and it becomes additive, right? I mean, the wonderful book by James Clear, Atomic Habits, is just such a great way of anchoring a little. It's Kaizen, right? I just did a post on this. Kaizen is the Japanese concept of just being a little bit better every day, just 1% better, or every week, where you're just doing a little something better.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the first one that you mentioned too, just tracking your sugar intake or something. And I would just add to that, you don't even have to commit to doing anything about it. Right? Like, because I think for some people, like anything, like there's been times in my life where I'm so overwhelmed, there's so much going on, whatever it is, it's like, oh my God, no, I can't, no, I can't do, I'll buy the bands and I won't do it. And then I'll feel like crap about myself. Okay, fine. So if you're somebody who's in that position, just increase your awareness without judgment. I just brought my son to the gym, my younger one. He really struggles to get there and he really needs to. He has a neuromuscular disorder. And I said to him, just bringing your body to the gym, like you don't have to kill it. Years ago, like every time I would fall off of going to the gym, when I would start again, sometimes I would just go and I just walk around and look at the machines. And it's like, okay, body, here we are. We're out the gym now. That's a win.
Absolutely.
Because your body's going to follow your mind. Your body is going to follow what you tell it. And so I said, it's fine. Let's just get there. And you don't have to be sweating like crazy. We're just like getting into a new habit. We're just showing up every day. And I think that can be important for people that feel like I just can't add any single thing.
Right. Exactly. And sometimes, and again, I keep referencing, and I apologize, but I did another post on, this time of year, everybody's like, I'm supposed to add so much more. No. What if you actually look at what you could do less of? What are all the things you could, again, turn down the noise on, turn down the volume on? What can you say no to? That's a goal for 2026, right? As opposed to all the things that we think we have to do. Where is there real value and where is there not? Those are the levers to play around with, right? How could I do less? And then if you choose, double down on a thing that you want and do more of that. But by doing less, sometimes it's incredibly freeing. And there are things that we assume into our routine by a creep. Maybe they creeped in there, etc. And questioning all the things, that self-audit, right? When we really look at what is taking my time, where am I spending my time? And I look back at the course of a week. Was there ROI? Was it valuable? Was it nourishing? Was it meaningful?
Yeah. I love that. What can you take away this year instead of add in? That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much for being here. Listeners, follow Nicole on her Instagram because she does post these little knickknacks and you can get all kinds of ideas about hacks and whatnot. And we'll put all the information about your book and how to get in touch on the show notes. But thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate your time and your willingness.
Absolutely. Wonderful, wonderful to spend the time with you and so appreciate your perspective on things as well. Yes, I look forward to staying in touch and I really appreciate you having me.